I'd put a tire on it and destroy them.
Here we go.
Miss Howard just said they think you made your point. You're right.
Oh, trouble.
Chastain got into Hamlin, and off he went.
Chastain with a small advantage, but he's in the wall. Hamlin got him.
Denny in the one, so playing grab ass.
Took off in a push, never lipped out of the gas, slams into the side of the one car. Maybe he owed him a little bit there.
They're like magnets on the racetrack every single week. All right, Denny discussed his most recent run-in on his weekly podcast, Actions Detrimental. Take a listen.
I'm about to get passed by everybody behind me who's on fresh tires. I'm about to finish in the mid-teens. And I said, "You're coming with me, buddy."
Really?
I let the wheel go, and I said, "He's coming with me." And so I've said for a while, well, you got to do something to get these guys' attention, whatever, and I've said it, and I think that Ross doesn't like it when I speak his name in the media and when I had this microphone. But I told him, well, I have a microphone, and I'm going to call it like I see it. And until you get a microphone, you can then say whatever you want about me. But the fact is while I'm sitting here talking, I'm going to call things the way I see it, and sometimes I'm going to have to call myself out, which I'm the dumbass who lost just as many spots as he did. But at the time, I said, well, I'm going to finish anyway, and I'm just going to make sure that he finishes right here with me.
All right, so honesty is the best policy, boys and girls, except maybe when NASCAR's listening and you admit to taking someone with you. Are you surprised that
I'm
Liam
slightly
and Brady
surprised.
always be honest?
Yeah, the name of the podcast is fitting. Denny did some actions that are detrimental. I'm surprised he admitted to what he did because you even heard Clint say it on the broadcast. You know, he pushed, he got tight, he stayed in the gas. And that's kind of what it looks like from an overhead until Denny comes out and says what he did. I'm not really sure there's anything to look into if you're NASCAR's part, you know, but you don't give them that opportunity. That's for sure.
We're going to talk about that in just a second. I do want to kind of talk about this a little bit more. Why do you think this isn't going away? It feels like someone does something.
So what's next? Is Ross going to have his own podcast too? Like, if he does, I kind of want to say, Ross, you want to start a podcast?
We can have dueling podcasts.
Yes.
You know?
Ross needs to go on Denny's podcast.
That's a great idea.
There you go, Denny. Okay, so we do want to kind of rewind a little bit because Hamlin did say that the reason that he did what he did this past weekend was because of what happened at the Clash. So we watched this when we were a little bit earlier together. And Brad, you said that's just the Clash, right? That's just the Coliseum. But when you have a driver who rubs you the wrong way, who you've had run-ins with before, something small like that just seems a lot bigger.
Well, you know, what stood out to me was Denny saying I needed to make a statement. And I think what he's really trying to say is, I've got good cars, I've got a good team, I'm getting wrecked too much, and I want not just him to know, I want everybody to know that this is how I'm going to race you back if this happens. And I really think that's really at the heart of what Denny was saying. Yeah, I'm sure he's very frustrated with some of the incidents he's had, Shannon, with Ross, but he's also trying to say to everybody else, like, this is too far.
All right. I mean, with Ross in particular, we know he's aggressive, right? So do you think Denny is going to speak his mind on his podcast? He's going to stand his ground on the racetrack. Is he trying to kind of say, hey, buddy, we need to chill out a little bit?
I think Denny, I don't think it's over. You know, and I don't think it's over because I don't think that was enough punishment in Denny's mind.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of people that Ross has run into, a lot of people he's ruffled feathers to. I think the Denny thing's big because we see it out in the public eye
And we're
on Monday
watching,
and
by the
Tuesday.
way, every time those guys get around each other.
And those two are up front.
Yeah.
They're up front running when they're doing this most of the time. So I think this is probably not the end of it for lots of reasons.
All right. You did mention the NASCAR component to this, right? So what if NASCAR does step in? Elton Sawyer is kind of, they're looking at this, they're taking an examination of what happened on the racetrack. So what if they step in? What if they don't step in? What are your thoughts?
Well, ultimately, everybody asks, where's the line? And the question is, we don't know. That's for NASCAR. That's why NASCAR has a job. Otherwise, we would just race and there'd be no NASCAR. They're the sanctioning body. They make the rules. They tell everybody where they are. And sometimes the way they have to tell you is by penalizing you. So if NASCAR comes in and puts a big penalty on them, you know, 100 points or maybe $100,000, whatever that is, then everybody's going to say, oh, clearly that's over the line. If they don't, you're going to see a lot more of this. So I think NASCAR's in a difficult spot. I suspect they're going to do something, although I'm not necessarily sure they should. Kind of like you were saying, Drew. but they're in an interesting spot here, and I would expect them to react somehow.
Yeah, I think this is a slippery slope. We talk about it all the time. You know, we were saying boys have at it 15 years ago, and that part of our sport we want, and we want to enjoy. We're going to show it on highlights. We're going to do things like that.
Until someone gets hurt.
That's exactly right.
Which is always where it inevitably gets to. It's boys have at it. Till somebody gets hurt, then it's, what were you guys thinking?
Well, and here's the other part of that. If Denny doesn't talk about it on Monday, are we really looking into this? So on next week, when someone gets wrecked coming to the checkers, and it was done on purpose, but we don't talk about it, is that looked into or not? So there's a lot of things that go in this, and I do not envy Elton Sawyer and those guys' job right now to determine, looking at S&T, what was on purpose and what wasn't.
You mentioned escalating, right? And listen, I mean, you were involved in a rivalry or on-track drama with Carl Edwards.
One or two. That was one of them, yeah.
But listen, I mean, there's a fine line between, you know, taking someone out at the Clash at the Coliseum and then what happened with you guys. I mean, it got straight up dangerous, right? So what's that fine line between just being upset with someone and trying to make a point and stuff like this that happened between you and Carl?
Well, I think, you know, escalation is the key word. Whether it's on the track or off the track, we see the same thing with the, you know, the cars when they go through technical inspection. If NASCAR doesn't step in, then it just keeps escalating until you get so far out of the box. And then you start to get this trickle-down effect where you have collateral damage, where other people get caught up in this who are completely innocent bystanders. And I think NASCAR really draws the line hard there.
Yeah, with Carl and yourself, I mean, how involved was NASCAR in that? What was sort of the thing that kind of calmed that down?
I think what probably calmed it down was NASCAR stepping in and talking to both of us.
Okay.
And then pretty much telling us that we're not going to have a job if this continues. And that was pretty strong motivation.
Well, but it was dangerous as well,
Yes,
right? I mean, a different story than what we're dealing with right now, but there is that fine line between what we're dealing with and maybe escalating. Because as we mentioned earlier, these are fast race cars. There's a lot of people, you know, things can happen very, very quickly out on the track. We don't want that to happen.
That's right.
Yep. I would keep everyone safe.